I was pinned inside a dark hotel closet, knees grinding into the thin carpet, my hand clamped over my own mouth so I wouldn't scream. Outside the door, in room 213, a key card clicked in the lock. It wasn't my key card. It wasn't one I had encoded for any guest that night. The doorknob never fully turned. It just rattled very gently, as if someone on the other side was holding it and waiting. Over the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears, I heard something that chilled me more than anything else that had happened that night. My own voice. Clear as if it were coming from a speaker right there in the room, I heard myself say, "Front desk, this is Ethan. How can I help you?" The problem was, my phone was dead, and I hadn't said those words in hours. Let me back up. Welcome back to Midwest Mysteries, the place where we explore real-feeling horror from quiet corners of the American Midwest. Tonight, I'll tell you a story from my time as a night auditor in a small highway hotel in rural Nebraska. I've changed my name and the name of the hotel, but everything you're about to hear happened exactly the way I remember it. You can call me Ethan, and the hotel, we'll call it the Black Hills Inn. I took the night shift there because I thought it would be easy money. It sat just off an interstate exit, like hundreds of other forgettable hotels. 2 stories of faded red brick, a narrow parking lot curling around the building, a gas station and a lonely diner sharing the same exit. On a map, the nearest town barely deserved the word town. A few grain silos, a tired water tower, and a main street that shut down by 9. Inside, the lobby could have been copied and pasted from any budget chain in the country. Beige wallpaper, a dusty fake ficus in the corner, a plastic rack of brochures for local attractions nobody cared about. It was so generic it almost felt fake. Behind the front desk hung a big laminated room status chart, the kind they should have thrown out when they upgraded to computers. On that chart, every room number was printed in neat black type, except one. Over 213, someone had carefully laid a strip of black tape. During my first training night, my manager, Dana, was walking me through the audit process, clicking through endless screens on the ancient reservation software. While she talked, my eyes kept drifting back to that tiny patch of black tape. "Why's that one covered?" I finally asked, nodding toward the board. She didn't even glance back. "Maintenance, out of order. We don't sell it," she said. "For how long?" She shrugged. "Before my time? You don't need to worry about that, Ethan. Just never assign anybody there, even if the system says it's clean. Corporate knows we're fine." She moved on with the training, but something in the way she avoided looking at that board lodged in my mind. Hotels hate leaving rooms empty for no reason. An out-of-order room is money they're choosing not to make. There had to be a better story than maintenance. Nights were quiet, especially midweek. Most of our guests were truckers, traveling nurses, sales reps, or tired families hauling kids in coolers across the country. They checked in, they slept, they left before sunrise. My job was to keep the place running during the dead hours. I developed little rituals to stay awake: printing reports, restocking the coffee, wiping smudges off the glass doors, and, when boredom really dug in, flicking through the security camera feeds on the old monitor behind the desk. The camera showed the lobby, entrances, parking lot, stairwells, and each hallway. The feed I found myself watching more than any other was the second-floor west hallway. It showed a long, narrow corridor lined with identical tan doors, closed and still. At the far end of that hall, just out of frame to the left, around a corner I couldn't see, was where room 213 should have been. One night around 2 in the morning, Rosa, the housekeeper who came in early to start laundry, pushed her cart through the side door. She was in her 50s, dark hair shot through with gray, and she'd worked there much longer than Dana. She glanced at the monitor's errors, then quickly looked away and muttered something in Spanish, making the sign of the cross as she passed the desk. I called after her, half joking, half curious. "What was that about? See a ghost on the cameras or something?" She paused and squinted at me. "You knew," she said. It wasn't a question. "Couple of weeks," I said. "You work nights?" She nodded to herself, then jerked her chin toward the west wing. "Then you listen. Don't go down that hall alone if you hear TV, especially after 2. "What's wrong with that hall?" I asked. She shook her head. "Ask Dana, is her hotel. Then she pushed her cart down the corridor, humming under her breath, leaving me staring at the monitor and wondering why a perfectly normal hallway would need a warning. After that, I watched that camera more closely. Most nights, nothing happened. Every so often, though, sometime around 2:30 or 3, the motion sensor in that hall would trip and the feed would pop from that idle gray to live color. And there would be nothing there. No guest, no housekeeper, just the empty hall and lights that seemed to flicker once, almost shyly, like the building taking a breath. I told myself it was cheap wiring or old bulbs. I needed those explanations. They kept the job simple. Then, about a week later, room 213 showed up in the system. It was a Tuesday, dead slow. I checked in 3 people between 11 and 1. At 1:17 a.m., I did my usual quick review of the in-house screen. There it was, 213, occupied. Guest name, Margaret Hall. Check-in time, 8:42 p.m. Method, walk-in. I frowned. There had been no walk-ins at 8:42 p.m. Dana was still on shift then. I hadn't seen anyone that fit that name at all. I went to the little filing cabinet where we kept registration cards, one for each occupied room. I flipped through 211, family from Iowa, 212, a traveling nurse from Denver, then an empty slot where 213's card should have been. After that, 214, a salesman who'd complained about the coffee. No Margaret Hall, no 213. Back at the desk, I opened the audit log. The system showed a keycard had been encoded for 213 at 8:42 p.m., exactly when the check-in supposedly occurred. The field that should have shown which user made that key? Blank. That never happened. The system always recorded the username of whoever was at the desk. I told myself it had to be an old record somehow resurfacing. A glitch. But we had a policy. If a room showed occupied, we checked on the guest at least once, especially if there was any weirdness with the record. I picked up the cordless lobby phone and dialed 213. It rang 3 times. On the 3rd ring, someone picked up. I heard breathing, fast and shallow, like whoever was on the other end had been running or crying. "Front desk, this is Ethan," I said. "Just checking to see if you're settling in okay tonight, Miss Hall." Nothing. "Hello?" I tried again. The breathing grew louder, closer to the receiver, until I could almost feel it against my ear. Then a woman's voice, barely more than a whisper, said, "Wrong room." And the line went dead. There was a crackle of static in my ear that I knew shouldn't be there. The phones in that place were old, but they weren't that old. Then nothing but the hum of the lobby AC and my heart pounding. I stared at the handset, suddenly hyper-aware of how alone I was. "Okay," I muttered to myself. "She's drunk, or half asleep, or she misdialed, something." Still, rules were rules. I grabbed my master keycard and headed upstairs. The 2nd floor was quiet, carpet swallowing my footsteps. The vending machine near the elevator buzzed with that annoying fluorescent hum. As I turned toward the West Hall, a chill brushed my face like a draft from somewhere, even though the windows on that floor didn't open. I walked down the hall, checking the numbers. 209, 210, 211, 212. Then a long, blank stretch of wall. Then 214. There was no 213, no door, no room. Just that odd, wide patch where a door should have been, painted the same off-white as the rest. Up close, the paint wasn't quite uniform. There were faint rectangular outlines beneath, as if something, like a door frame, had been filled in and covered over. I ran my hand along the wall and felt a narrow vertical ridge. A seam. I was looking at a door that had been erased. I raised my hand to knock on the drywall, mostly to prove to myself how stupid this all was. Before I touched it, the cordless phone on my belt buzzed. I nearly dropped it. The screen said, "Lobby desk." Nobody was at the desk. Nobody could be calling me from there. I answered anyway. "Yeah, this is Ethan," my own voice replied. "Front desk, this is Ethan. How can I help you?" Came over the line, calm and polished, exactly the way I answered the phone each night. My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" I demanded. I demanded, stepping away from the wall. There was a flicker in the line, like the sound you get when an old TV loses its signal. Then the same sentence in the same tone repeated. "Front desk, this is Ethan. How can I help you?" I hung up. When I looked up, I realized I was standing squarely in front of where the door to 213 used to be. I walked back to the elevator a little too fast, telling myself it was all an internal phone glitch, some misrouted call, something technical I didn't understand. But I knew that phone system. I'd read the manual. There was no way to loop my own voice like that. The next afternoon, I cornered Dana. "Be straight with me," I said. "What's the deal with 213? She stiffened. "What about it?" "I had a phantom reservation in there last night," I said. "The system said it was occupied, guest name and everything. I called, someone answered. I went upstairs, the room doesn't exist, and my phone called me from the lobby and played my own voice at me. That doesn't happen by accident." For a moment, her face changed. The professional mask slipped, and I saw something like exhaustion, and behind it, fear. She sat down heavily in one of the lobby chairs and motioned for me to do the same. "You know, this place had different owners before the last remodel," she said. "Yeah," I answered. "The logo on the building doesn't match half the stuff inside." "Before that," she said slowly, "when it was still under the old franchise, there was an incident. A woman checked in late one night by herself. She was driving from Colorado to Illinois. She never checked out." I swallowed. "Never?" "They found her car in the lot," Dana said. "Door locked, nothing disturbed. Her room key was on the nightstand, TV still on, no sign of a struggle, no blood. Her suitcase was gone. She was gone. No cameras on that hall back then. This was before the first big upgrade." "What room?" I asked, but I already knew. 213, she said. Her name was Margaret Hall. The same name that had appeared in my system the night before. The police tore the place up. They interviewed everyone. The night auditor at the time swore the cameras just glitched out around her floor that night. They couldn't prove anything. Eventually, corporate renovated. They walled the room off, turned it into some kind of storage from the other side. New owners came in later, were told it was plumbing problems, and decided not to ask questions. "And you just left it like that?" I asked. "What do you want me to do?" she snapped. "I can't make her reappear. I can't fix whatever is wrong with that room. We don't book it. We don't go in. We tape over the number and we move on." She stood up, clearly signaling that the conversation was over. "The system sometimes burps and shows 213 as occupied," she added. "If it happens, ignore it. If it'll help you sleep, go into the phone panel and turn off the ringer for that line at night." "I heard her," I said, "or something." Dana's eyes hardened. "I worked here the week she vanished. I checked out her husband while he walked around asking every guest if they'd seen his wife. So don't tell me what you heard. I hear her every time I walk down that hall." She went into the back office and shut the door. Rosa avoided my gaze the rest of that week. The next night, I did what Dana suggested. I went into the phone panel and disabled the ringer for 213 on the lobby line. No calls in, no calls out. I wanted to believe that would be enough. By midnight, things had settled into their normal rhythm. A trucker refilled his coffee and went back up to his room. I ran the audit, printed the reports, and for a little while, I forgot about 213. Then the fire alarm went off. The siren tore through the building, a shrill, pulsing scream that made my bones vibrate. Red strobes started spinning in their domes overhead, bathing the beige walls in frantic flashes. On the panel behind the desk, a cluster of lights flickered and a message scrolled across the tiny display. "Second floor, West Hall, room 213, smoke detected." Of course. I grabbed the emergency keys and the master keycard, acknowledged the alarm so the horns would silence, and snatched up the little two-way radio. I told myself it was a dusty detector, a bad sensor, anything but what I already feared. But the rules were clear. I had to physically check the source. Upstairs, the second floor West Hall felt too narrow, like the walls had edged closer together. The red strobes painted everything in slow, bloody pulses. Halfway down the hall, I stopped. The blank wall where 213 had been now held a door. Not a new door, an old one, slightly scuffed, with a dull brass handle and a number plate that looked like it belonged to an earlier version of the hotel. The plate read 213. There was no sign of fresh construction, no mismatched paint. The door looked like it had always been there, A thin thread of gray smoke leaked from the gap at the bottom, curling up into the hallway air. If this is real, I don't have time to freak out, I told myself out loud, grasping for any sense of control. I hammered on the door. "Front desk, is anyone in there?" No answer. The smoke thickened, turning greasier, darker. I slid the master keycard through the reader. The light flashed green. I pushed. The door didn't move. It felt like something heavy leaned against it from the inside. I threw my shoulder into it. On the third hit, the door gave way, and I stumbled into the room. Heat rolled over me, dense and humid, not the searing blast of open flame, but the weight of a room that had been closed too long. The only light came from an old tube TV in the corner, flickering blue and white. Its screen showed nothing but static. "Hello?" I called. "Ms. Hall, is anyone here?" My voice was swallowed by the room. It was a standard double queen layout, but frozen in a different time. The bedspreads were an older pattern, the furniture more worn, the colors wrong compared to the rest of the hotel. It was like stepping backwards 6 or 7 years. The smoke I'd seen in the hall seemed to be coming from the bathroom. A thin gray curl drifted from under the door. I pushed it open and flipped the light switch. The fan whirred to life, squeaking feebly. Yellowed light filled the tiny space. No fire, no smoke. The air was stale but normal. The mirror was streaked as if it had been wiped with a towel and never fully dried, yet the glass was cold. When I stepped back into the main room, the TV's static had changed. It wasn't just white noise anymore. The screen showed the lobby, our lobby. The camera angle was the same as the feed behind the desk. The timestamp in the corner read 2:13 a.m., the exact time on the nightstand clock beside one of the beds. But the date was 6 years earlier. I watched the front doors slide open on the TV. A man walked in wearing my uniform. The same cheap vest, the same shirt, the same tie. He moved behind the desk and sat down where I always sat. He picked up the phone and answered it the way I've answered it 1,000 times. "Front desk, this is Ethan. How can I help you?" he said. Another feed appeared in a box in the corner of the TV, the second floor West Hall, grainy and older. A woman walked into frame, dragging a rolling suitcase. Mid-30s, worn windbreaker, jeans, hair pulled back in a tired ponytail. She stopped at 2:13. She lifted her keycard. The lock light on her door flashed green. As she started to push it open, the screen cut to black. Behind me, the bathroom door slammed. I spun around. Air rushed past me, but there was no one there. The bathroom light had gone out on its own. I stared at the shut door, then at the dead TV screen that had been playing footage from the past. I said out loud, just to hear my own voice, Okay, I get it. Bad room, I'm leaving now." I reached for the door to the hallway. The knob was ice cold, so cold it burned. As my hand closed around it, I heard the lock slide with a soft, deliberate click. I tried to turn it. It wouldn't budge. Behind me, the TV flickered back on. The lobby appeared again. This time there was no timestamp, just that empty desk, the doors, the chairs. Then my own voice filled the room again. "Front desk, this is Ethan. How can I help you?" Only it wasn't coming from the TV. It was coming from the closet. Every hair on my body stood on end. The closet door was partially open, a narrow, dark slit above a sagging ironing board. The hangers inside creaked and began to sway, slowly back and forth, though there was no draft. I backed up until the bed hit my legs. Everything in me screamed not to get closer, but there was no way out through the hall door. The window was sealed shut. The bathroom had no escape. Some twisted instinct said, if something is coming out of that closet, you don't want to see its face. You don't want to be on this side of the door when it walks into the room. I took 2 steps forward and yanked the closet door all of the way open. The little ceiling light inside didn't come on. The space beyond was thicker and darker than it had any right to be. The smell got stronger. Damp cloth, old suitcase, a faint metallic tang like old pennies and faded perfume. The closet felt deeper than any hotel closet should be. The flashlight I'd clipped to my belt was suddenly, conveniently, not there. I patted myself down and came up with nothing. On the floor at the back of the closet sat a duffel bag. Faded blue, cheap nylon, the kind you'd buy off a clearance rack. A paper luggage tag hung from the handle. In neat, looping handwriting, it said M. Hall. Behind the bag, there was more darkness, too much darkness, the wrong shape. It looked like the closet simply kept going, deeper into the wall, into something that wasn't part of the floor plan. From that thick darkness, my voice drifted out again, distant and muffled, like it was coming from the end of a long tunnel. Front desk, this is Ethan. How can I help you? Some rational part of my brain broke right there. I did exactly the wrong thing. I climbed into the closet. I squeezed past the duffel bag, turned my back to that stretching darkness, and pulled the door almost shut, leaving only a narrow sliver of light from the TV to paint a pale line across the floor. My logic, if you can call it that, was that if the room, that thing, that presence couldn't see me, maybe it would pass me by. Maybe whatever replayed itself in there on endless loop needed an audience, and if I wasn't watching, it might not notice me. I crouched on the thin carpet, heart hammering, breath shallow. The air in the closet was freezing, but sweat slid down my neck. For a long time, there was nothing but the faint buzzing of the TV and my own pulse. Then, very clearly, I heard the beep of a keycard being read by a lock. It came from inside the room. I held my breath. The soft mechanical clunk of the door. Footsteps crossing the carpet. Through the slats of the closet door, I could see just the narrowest strip of the room. A pair of women's flats stepped into view, scuffed at the toes, just like on the TV footage. They stopped directly facing the closet. The cordless phone on the nightstand rang once. Then I heard my own voice answer it, not in my head, but in the room, perfectly clear. Front desk, this is Ethan. How can I help you? The shoes didn't move. I pressed my palm harder over my mouth, my teeth digging into my skin, desperate not to make a sound. The air in the closet grew colder still, so cold that each breath came out as a pale, fogging whisper. A finger slid between two of the closet slats. Pale, narrow, impossibly still. It traced along the edge of the wood, as though feeling for the outline of where I'd shut myself in. Then the finger withdrew. A moment later, the room door slammed. Silence. I stayed in that closet long after my legs went numb and pins and needles crawled up my calves. Eventually, somewhere far away in the building, I heard the distant, reset clunk of the fire system and the soft hum of the air units kicking back into their normal cycle. When I finally found the courage to push the closet door open, the room looked like any other unoccupied hotel room. The TV was off, the air was still, the smoke detector light was dark, the duffel bag was gone. I opened the door to the hall. On the other side was a blank stretch of second-floor wall where the old walled-off space had always been. No door, no number. I walked back down to the lobby in a daze. The fire panel was green. No alarms, no errors. The event log showed that the alarm that had summoned me to the second floor had cleared itself 5 minutes after activation. The system claimed nobody had acknowledged it. The clock on the wall read 3:02 a.m. I checked the camera footage. From midnight until 3 in the morning, every camera covering the second floor west wing had recorded nothing but static. I lasted another 2 weeks. Dana told me there were no unusual entries in the system, no proof of any door or alarm. She said I'd probably dozed off at the desk and had a nightmare. The logs didn't lie, she said. The cameras didn't lie. But cameras had glitched once before, the night Margaret Hall disappeared. I quit. I moved. I tried to forget. The hotel changed hands again not long after I left. New sign out front, fresh paint, updated photos online. The websites all proudly listed 40 rooms. But if you stand in the parking lot and count the windows on that west side of the second floor, there are 41. I know. I've counted. About a year after I left Nebraska, my phone rang at 2:13 in the morning. I woke up in my small apartment 3 states away, heart hammering from some dream I couldn't remember. The room was dark. My phone glowed on the nightstand. Unknown number. Nebraska area code. Every instinct told me to ignore it, but I answered. Hello? I croaked. Static. Then faint and far away, I heard the beep of a keycard reading a lock. My own voice came down the line. warped slightly by distance, but unmistakable. Front desk, this is Ethan. How can I help you? I hung up. I changed my number the next day. New SIM, new carrier. I told myself that number was cut off, that no one and nothing could ever dial it again. I haven't stayed alone in a roadside hotel since. If I have to travel, I spring for places with lots of people, big lobbies, too much light, too much noise. I don't work nights anymore, but I still drive sometimes. And when you drive long enough on the American interstate, the exits all start to look the same. Gas stations, glowing signs, hotel logos on tall poles. Sometimes when I'm stuck at a light or getting gas, I find myself looking up at the rows of windows on those cloned hotels. I count. Every once in a while, there's an extra window. One that doesn't line up with the floor plan on the website. One that doesn't seem to belong to any room you can actually book. Maybe it's a storage room. Maybe it's an architectural quirk. Or maybe it's like 213 at the Black Hills Inn. Walled off, but not empty. Officially out of order, but still very much occupied. So if you ever end up in one of those little highway hotels in the middle of the Midwest, and the front desk clerk tells you not to worry about a certain room, that it's under maintenance or out of order, do yourself a favor and don't ask too many questions. And if your phone ever rings at 2:13 a.m. and the caller ID says it's the front desk, and you hear your own voice say, "How can I help you?" From the other side of the line, hang up. Some hotel rooms don't let their guests check out. Not really. You've just heard my story. If you're listening to this on Midwest Mysteries and you're alone in a hotel room right now, maybe glance at the peephole. Maybe count the doors in your hallway. Maybe make sure your closet is empty. And whatever you do, if there's a door that isn't supposed to be there or a room the staff pretend doesn't exist, don't go inside.